I'm on the job site right now, and I have decided that I'm going to sit my small but shapely patoot down here in the truck and eat Jack Link's beef sticks and think about my history. You know, I stopped streaming on YouTube whenever I discovered that Kick was a thing, but Kick still doesn't have the capability of streaming to mobile. So here I sit alone and disheartened. Tried to poop, but I only farted. Thinking about uh, my younger self and my past mistakes, because the reason that got prompted was because I was looking on Reddit earlier on r/ask men, and so one of the questions that was on the most newest posts was, what is the stupidest thing that you did whenever you were a horny teenager? And that immediately just brought back a flood of memories of all sorts of things that I shall not talk about, as they are both unspeakable and honestly probably predictable. Um, but it kind of brought to mind, like, the whole idea of a 3 a.m. memory. Whenever you're laying there in bed and you're looking up at the ceiling and you think, damn, I was a dumbass. And now you can't sleep because you just stuck dwelling on your past mistakes and how much you fucked something up back in the olden day whenever you were but a wee lad. And this is something that has afflicted me quite a bit in the past. More recently, it really hasn't been that big of a deal, because I kind of, A, stopped caring, but also B, my memory's really bad. So yeah, I mean, hell, I could barely remember the combination to be able to unlock this door if I forget the key, and it's like really important. Um, but one thing that I will say, and kind of bringing up a memory from my childhood in the process, is that you don't like who you were and you don't like thinking about yourself because of you being smarter and wiser and more knowledgeable now than you were back then. And yeah, I mean, just like your older self, you're the upgrade of your previous self. You're the upgrade of your younger, youthful version. You're less naive. You're more knowledgeable about the way the world works, how people work, stuff, obvious, simple stuff like that. But it's kind of the lame moose theory of comedy, which I believe is the correct terminology. Lame something theory of comedy, where something's humorous because of how pathetic it is. And you kind of see that in slapstick a lot, where somebody slips and bashes their head or bashes their behind into the concrete that they fell upon, and oh my goodness, it's funny because lame moose, because something just hurt itself, something is in some way inferior to yourself, and so that triggers whatever cerebellous risibility that you might have towards this thing that you're seeing. And whenever it's yourself, it's not quite as funny, because you don't like to look in the mirror and see something that isn't pristine. You have a very high view of yourself. Even if your self-esteem may be in the gutter, you probably still do have some pride, some self-respect, some desire to look in the mirror and see something good. And the memories that you have of your youth that you hate are instances of seeing the lame moose and not being happy that it's you. The example that I would give from my life is the fact that whenever I was 13, 14, 2008, yes, so 13 and 14, I wanted to be a screenwriter. I'm telling you, Sonny, I wanted to write for the movies. And the reason that I wanted to do this was because I had watched the movie Wall-E that was released by Pixar in 2008. And that thing, I'm telling you, that was just the best movie I'd ever watched. Completely changed my view of filmmaking, because I had obviously grown up watching all kinds of movies, and there was a lot of them that I really enjoyed, but none of them really just jumped out of the screen and slapped me quite like Wall-E did. I just absolutely loved that film. For whatever reason, it became an obsession. And probably because it was the first movie that I ever watched completely by myself, without, mama pausing the video to go and talk on the phone, or, my little sisters running through the living room and crossing in front of the television and removing me from watching the film, removing my immersion. And watching the film by myself, I was completely immersed, and oh my goodness, this is just absolutely fabulous. This is the best thing God ever created. Um, and yeah, I took that and ran with that, and really just thought that this was so fantastic. I want to do this whenever I grow up. And so I started writing things. I can't even remember half of what I wrote because so much of it was just kind of like short stories. I have a whole collection of it in a binder at the house that I haven't opened in years, but that idea of filmmaking and writing scripts and being able to make something that fulfilled the same joy as watching this film did was a dominant motivator for a good portion of my early teenage years until pretty much whenever I turned 19 and got a job working for the supermarket and stocking the shelves. And around about that time, I realized, yeah, this job that I've got really sucks. But at first, whenever I got hired on, I didn't think it was going to be too big of a deal. I thought it was going to be pretty much an easy, cushy job. Let me just sit here and throw soup cans on the shelf. But now that I'm actually here, and now that I'm actually got my nose to the grocery grindstone, this is a lot more exhausting than I previously anticipated, especially whenever it got to being a change in the shift where I was having to work overnight and pretty much became nocturnal for 2 straight years, never saw the sun, had to take vitamin D pills. I'm telling you, I got up whenever the sun was going down and went to bed whenever the sun was coming back up working for that place. And I eventually grew to not really enjoy it at all. It was actually more of a drudgery than anything else working there. And after I thought so highly of it whenever I first joined, I thought it would be the perfect way to get into making money because it didn't, on the outside, seem like there was anything to it. And so, having thought about this and how my perception of that changed, I started to think, maybe writing scripts for movies was probably a stupid idea because it's a dream job. It's something that I would absolutely love to do for money. But now that I know how jobs work and know that once you get into something, it's not nearly as fun as you thought it would be, that dream job might actually be the worst thing that could have happened to me. A dream job, you get it and it ceases to be a dream and starts to be a job. So now, years and years later, about to be turning 30 here directly, and yeah, I think back on all of the time that I spent as a child, as a very young man, young teen, scribbling on notebook paper, all sorts of different stuff. I also think back to the time that I put in an application on Pixar's company website to work for them. Now, of course, completely impossible, and my parents didn't even know I attempted to do it, but I tried to apply to work for their company at the age of 14, which, as you can imagine, probably would not exactly hash out in my favor. But yeah, I sure enough actually did that, and obviously couldn't get past most of the initial login questions because of being incredibly underage. But I did attempt it, and that's incredibly stupid. From my perception now, because I'm older and I'm wiser, somewhat, and I understand, basic labor laws. Back then, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now to understand that what I was doing was completely pointless and ultimately dumb from an outside view. We're kind of unfair to ourselves in that respect, because if you see some kid now being yourself, being your own age, being your current iteration, and you see a kid doing something that really isn't that smart, you can't put too much blame on them because they don't know any better. And you can't blame yourself as a kid either for the things that you might have done back then because you didn't know any better. You were a lame moose. And eventually you'll look back on it and laugh, because eventually you'll be able to you'll be able to consolidate yourself, your expectations of yourself with what you have. And it's simple things like that, and obviously there's other things that might actually warrant some disgust, some distaste. Like whenever I think back to the time that I was playing with my sister in the bedroom, in the back of the trailer, we'd been playing with toys or something to that effect, like little Matchbox cars, and I had a little sit and spin, which was a little plastic wheel that you sat on, and you grabbed the little turny wheel, and you spun yourself around on it. It had little music and lights and things on it. A little play school product. And my sister absolutely loved that thing, so I thought, well, she'd probably find it rather amusing if I spun her around in a circle holding her by her ankles. So yeah, stupid kid that I was, I grabbed my sister by her ankles and I spun her around and around me like I was a top. Eventually winding up losing my grip and throwing her into the toy box on the other side of the room. God, really dumb. Because I injured my sister. And so, yeah, things like that might sneak up on you at 3 a.m. But, again, my sister's just fine now. At least I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I really didn't have anything else to say. And realistically, I'm just trying to sit here and kill some time because I've got 5 more hours that I've got to be here. And I'm really tired of being here. Because there's nothing to do at this job site. There's just nothing to do. We've already done everything there is to do. We're kind of just going around pedaling now. And I don't like it whenever a job site hits that stage where there's nothing to do, because it'll make a 10-hour day seem like 20 hours long. Because you're just bored. You idle. You got nothing to do with your hands. Nothing to do with your poor little mind. So you just kind of have to sit here and wait. Well, doing little tasks here and there, going and checking the wiring, going and looking at strapping, making sure everything's up to code. But if you've already done that twice and you're just trying to eat up time, it makes for a really long work day. So that's why I turned on the stream with the original proposition of, responding to that question that I saw on r/askmen. Although the original premise of that question is, what did you do when you were a horny teenager that was stupid? Indicating that they wanted an answer that had something related to, your prototype sexual urges, which, I don't want to talk about that. That is something that I've noticed about r/askmen. Is that 90% of the questions are sexual. I haven't looked at r/askwomen. I wonder if that would be any different. Probably not. Anyway, I'm going to take a nap. Bye.